they seem to be female. Nothing wrong in that. You know, very talented, but we're very fortunate because the talent of the company on stage is matched by those backstage as well. The stage manager will welcome the artists when they arrive. We'll tell them sort of, you know, how much time they have got whilst they're actually warming up. The deputy will then, as I say, actually drive the show, and I'll talk more about how that is done. But the assistant, one of the tasks is to make certain all the props are where they should be. Now, you'll see in a moment that there's not a lot of time for actors to come off the stage and get back to the dressing room. So a lot of props are actually around here. In this production, not so much the case, but certainly in the histories, in Hamlet, and The Dream, and the other two productions, we had The Merchant and Taming of the Shrew. There were lots of props. I'll show you where the mise en scène in the studio is. That is usually where props are stored as well. So you imagine, I mean, there can be something over 100 props. The ASM, with someone from props, will tick everything backstage, and then come here, go around, everything, tick them off, because you will find in certain productions, you'll have props here, and the name of it. So the actor comes off and knows exactly where to go. Incidentally, when we had Hamlet, Doctor Who's chair was there. It was quite popular with visitors who wanted to touch it. And for some productions, you have also a list of scenes. Rather interesting. It was pure coincidence that the first line of Hamlet is, "Who's there?" And no disrespect to David Tennant, he was not the first Doctor Who to play in the Courtyard. If anyone is a Doctor Who fan, it was in fact Sylvester McCoy who was the fool. Did anyone see the production of King Lear? It's now available on DVD, but he was the fool to Ian McKellen's
I want to see
Lear.
that.
Now, what I'm going to do is talk
I
a
want to see
little
that on
about
DVD.
the sound and how sound has developed over the ages, and then something rather interesting regarding something that is used in a lot of productions. And I'll give you, if I say it's red, that's a clue. You just have a look at the sound system, please.
So it's just so raw. It's so raw.
You're the one who said raw.
It's industrial without feeling cold.
Good one, Gianna.
Architectural.
Wow. Uh-oh, bed coming in.
If you came to the old theatre, there was a similar situation at the back. But our sound technicians, again, they take their cues from the deputy stage manager, but they can actually see what is going on. I'm going back. I don't know if any of you have done any theatre, whether it's professional or amateur. I'm going back, prior to the 50s, and of course, in a lot of theatres, let's assume one of the characters had to sound an alarm. They would be going through their speech. They'd have, say, a sort of, what passed for a sort of medieval trumpet in their hand, and someone would be watching from the wings with this text. At a certain moment, quite clean, they get a handkerchief out and they go, someone further along would go, until you got to someone with a tape recorder. They'd press a button, much more sophisticated now and very realistic. When I was showing a party around during Henry V, by pure chance, they were testing the sound effects of the Siege of Harfleur. You really felt you were there. It's so much like the sort of sound you hear in the cinema. In 1963, the company did another cycle of histories which have become known as the Wars of the Roses. They sort of put on the early Henry plays and slightly adapted them, and ended with Richard III. In that production, it was decided that the Battle of Bosworth would have cannons. So these cannons were wheeled on, and you saw actors standing there in armour, someone raised a mailed fist, sound of cannons. This is how they did it. There weren't previews in those days. It was straight in with the sort of first, production with the press there. On the morning of the first performance, the sound director grabbed whoever was going past, including Sir Peter Hall, and gave them all an empty bag of crisps. Would you please blow these up? They blew them up, and the sound was amplified. As I say, we've moved on since then, and we have some actually incredible effects. Also incredible effects when it comes to battles and blood. I'm going to talk about that now. If I can just come past you, please. You'd like to follow me around to this side?
Me and him should be like best friends. I do. Yeah. I have a fork
There's
against
a
the
little
two
space
groups.
here as well. So. Sorry. Yeah.
Hey. Props.
There is an example of one of the props. You remember the Friar Lawrence talks about sort of herbs. Well, that's Friar Lawrence's basket where he'll come and get it. Again, someone quite rightly surmised this is used for quick change. In fact, when David Tennant was here, all his changes were backstage. When you saw it in London the other week, did you notice those quite incredible costumes they wore in the play scene?
Yes.
I don't know how they did it in London, but here, whilst the scene was going on, where we met initially, that was a changing room. The dressers were there with the cast putting on those costumes, because for some productions, actors, once the play begins, they actually cross that auditorium and make entrances from the back. Just along here, if I can just, you will see red marks. Yes, it is stage blood. I'm not suggesting that the actors are cavalier, and they won't do that in the new theatre, although there will be a sort of similar situation. But if an actor's got to rush off stage in a battle and come back looking as if someone has actually hacked him in the neck with an axe, it's got to look realistic. Yes, the cinema does things in a different way, and yes, it's a different art form, but equally, the company wants to give people a special experience. If you're going to see a battle, then you will see a battle. And in the histories, a lot of actors would rush off, they get the stage blood, and they used in the complete works, bearing in mind all the plays were done, they used 60 gallons. The only company that didn't was a company from Japan under the famous director Ninagawa, and they presented Titus Andronicus. I won't go into the plot, those you know it.
Yeah.
But there was no blood because they used ribbons.
Oh.
Very, very effective. One of the sort of iconic pictures is of the actor playing Titus with his daughter. How much blood was used in the complete works, I just don't know, but it was fantastic. We had a fight captain, and there was a scene in Henry VI where they were on ladders, literally lowered from above, looking at this French city. All of a sudden you had this effect of cannon fire, and one of them, he sort of turned upside down. He put his hand there, and the effect was that half his face was missing with blood. In Hamlet, if anyone noticed, the scene with the, where he cut his